Want to see something wonderful?
Yeah. Peacock brings the joy of Wicked home.
Come with me. What? To meet the wizard.
With a sing-along version. Wicked, rated PG, streaming now, only on Peacock.
If you had to pick one of the stereotypical Breakfast Clubbers, which one was the closest to you, do you feel?
Probably say Brian, only because he was the bookworm.
I'm not going to lie.
But you probably would have guessed that.
Hello, I'm Jacqueline Coley. Welcome to Seen on the Screen, brought to you by Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes, where we talk movies with some of the people behind the scenes at NBC Universal. When entertainment works best, sometimes it opens a window into a world we've never imagined. Other times, it shows us a mirror image of our lives with a heightened sense of home. Today, we're going to dig into the question, what have you seen on the screen that has done that? My guest today is Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development, Shivani Patel. Shivani, welcome to the Seen on the Screen podcast.
Thank you.
All right, first question, my favorite one. Who are you and what do you do for NBC Universal?
Yeah, I'm Shivani Patel, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for our film group.
What does that mean exactly? That's like such an impressive title. I was just sitting here mesmerized by it.
So in a nutshell, I support the greenlight process for all our films, and my team provides the financial insights that help determine what movies we make.
Yeah, after I met you, I was like, she's the gal with the numbers. And my favorite word, and one we'll use in this, is comps, which is comparable properties, right? Yep. That's what that means, learning new tools every day. So your team's job is to really look at the comparable movies before you make a movie so that you have an idea of what audience?
Yeah, so that's just one piece of the process. If I kind of demystify greenlight as a term for a second, at the kind of most baseline level, when a project comes into the studio and we decide whether to make it or not, there's various different elements we need to look at. But if I had to distill it down to two main elements, one is the creative. So the development team will read the script. Is there a compelling narrative? Is there a cast we're excited about, a director we want to be in business with? And then there's the financials. Like, we want to make movies that will make money. So that's where my team will come in. And we will look at the full life cycle of a project, monetization through every single window, and essentially identify the performance levels where we can make a meaningful return. And that's just the beginning of the process. Marketing and distribution will weigh in. We'll work with business affairs as they're structuring the deals with talent and producers, since that's a big component. That's the basics of where my team fits into the greenlight process.
But what's crazy about it is it's such an impressive job, but it's one of these, again, jobs that are behind the scenes. And unless you know about it, you wouldn't do it. I think it's even more interesting that you had a whole nother life in a different career and then came to this. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your journey to entertainment creative.
Yeah. So I actually started my career in investment banking, which is very different. I practically covered every industry, not intentionally, but every industry except entertainment.
Wow.
But as cliche as it will sound, I knew since I was a kid that I wanted to work in the industry in some capacity. I grew up in Southern California, and so Hollywood and entertainment seemed like an industry that was very close yet very far away in terms of career attainability. But I grew up in a big multi-generational Indian family, so my family, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. And so the one activity you can do together when you have such a big family is watch movies. So essentially, I was exposed to every era and genre of movies since I was a kid. So from the OG Bond movies with Sean Connery, who my dad loves, or the 90s, 2000s rom-coms. There was a divide in the family who loved Lord of the Rings versus Harry Potter.
Nice.
But essentially, movies were a big part of my childhood. And so when I was ready to figure out the next steps in my career after banking, I was browsing through job listings and I saw the job at Universal, and I was, first of all, surprised that people can do this for a living.
Yeah.
So yeah, I applied for it and I've been here ever since.
Lovely. And so how long have you been with NBC Universal?
For 10 years.
10 years. That's the other thing. It's like, I was like, no, put it out there because I want people to understand how impressive it was at the time that you started that. And then the part of the business that you're leading now, which is just, again, so impressive. Since your family was a big movie family, what were the traditions? Like you mentioned some of the films that y'all fought over, but like gathering that many people together is a task in itself.
So we would watch movies together as a family every Friday night. And it would just be funny because a different person would get to choose every week. So my dad would take one of us to Blockbuster and you would choose the movie and you would kind of just be forced to watch the movie that person chose. So there would be some interesting ones. Like one of my cousins would always choose the prestige Oscar dramas, which when you're a 10-year-old kid, that's the last thing you want to watch.
Fair.
I'd gravitate towards like the adventure fantasy films that the girls in the family would not love because they'd want to watch a rom-com, but it really kind of forced all of us to embrace every type of genre.
With that being said, since you did the thing that I guess every parent, especially I think parents of immigrants or maybe the first ones in their generation to go to school or that kind of thing, you did the thing that most of them want. You were investment banking. Yeah. So was it a bit of a like, hey guys, when you told them that you wanted to do entertainment, or were they like 100% supportive?
My parents have been pretty supportive. They just said, if you do whatever you want to do, just make sure you're good at it and you're successful. And so they also didn't fully understand what I was doing. I'm convinced up until 2 or 3 years ago, they thought I was actually physically making movies. But they just get excited that I work in the industry. And they see that I get a lot of joy out of it. So they've been supportive from the start.
They hitting you up for premiere tickets, or have you taken them?
I have. I've taken my sister. I took her to Ticket to Paradise. And it was just very sweet because I could just see her having this out-of-body experience when she saw George and Amal Clooney walk in. But
something
that was
that
really
most
sweet.
of us will do. Let's be real.
Yeah. So that was nice.
Oh, I dig that. All right. Excellent. Now let's dive into our popcorn bucket.
Great.
So you've watched the podcast, right? So you know what's up? All right.
I have.
First one, it's our quotes. Sarcasm is the refuge of losers.
That's the dad from Little Miss Sunshine.
Such a great
I'll
movie.
finish that quote for you.
What is it?
Sarcasm is losers trying to bring winners down to their level.
Oh, that's a great one.
He has the best quotes in the movie, even though he's the worst character in the movie. But yeah.
The dad. You know what? Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. The more I think about it. And then Alan Arkin basically being the like best version of every grandpa in that one. What is your attachment to Little Miss Sunshine?
So that was a movie that when I saw it, I was a lot older than Abigail Breslin's character in the movie. So I was a teenager, but there's something about her character that I was really drawn to. She almost represented someone I wish I could be, in the sense that she had a vision. She had this dream to go compete at this pageant, and she really stood strong against a lot of the pressures that younger girls face in terms of being or looking a certain way. And you could see throughout the movie that there were points in time where she might crack, the insecurities are creeping in, but she stays true to herself. And I think the movie overall is just kind of a commentary, if you even just take a look at this quote, a commentary on like society's obsession with what does it mean to be a winner or loser. And every character brings their extreme philosophy. But I love the ending of it for that exact reason, because none of the characters get anything they want. She loses a pageant, gets banned forever, but they're all closer as a family. And I think at its core, it is a movie about family, and I gravitate towards films like that. And so it's one of those movies that brings a smile to my face every time I watch it.
Yeah, comfort film.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that you say that too, because now that I think back on it, it really is a movie about the people who maybe society would call losers.
Yeah.
Still thinking of themselves as winners.
Yep.
And that's like a really powerful moment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think even the most successful people, somebody might be calling them a loser by comparison, right?
Exactly.
Oh, very powerful.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to our second quote. This is a good one.
Yeah.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
It's Harvey Dent from Dark Knight.
I love that you also, again, this is the extra credit we were talking about, everyone.
Yeah.
No, that is such a great one.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about, people forget who he was talking about that. He was talking about Caesar and Rome. Because they were like, they would get one man and like some consul. And he's like, that's what I thought was interesting, is the hero he was talking about that was Caesar. But Dark Knight, what a movie.
Yeah. That was the movie that I watched and I knew I had to work in film in some capacity. Like I remember everyone was talking about the performance of Heath Ledger. I wasn't particularly drawn to superhero movies. I hadn't seen Batman Begins. I loved the Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton Batman. Yep. So I kind of went into it just wanting to watch it because of the hype around it. And it was a movie that really surprised me because even more so than a superhero movie, it's a genre movie. It's a crime thriller. But if you are a fanboy, you'll like the mythology. Mm-hmm. But it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before visually. And there was character development in a way that I've not seen in any other superhero movie since then. And it was a movie I talked to my friends a lot about after we left the theaters. It kept you thinking around some of the decisions that the characters make. It also was the beginning of my obsession with all Chris Nolan soundtracks.
Yeah.
And I remember I watched it 3 times in the 70 millimeter IMAX screen. So it was a big deal even back then to watch a Chris Nolan movie in that IMAX screen. And each time I brought back a different friend who did not love superhero movies to convince them that this was going to be the movie that changed their mind.
Wow.
And so it was one of those films that I remember. I think it was just a big moment for people in my generation overall.
Yeah, and cinema too.
Yeah.
Also, look at you creating disciples of cinema a little bit. And then it's interesting because then to work with Christopher Nolan, to be in that meeting where they greenlit Oppenheimer.
Yeah, so
like
it feels like a full circle moment, which happens a lot when you're in those greenlight meetings to see filmmakers that you grew up watching that now you're in the meetings where you're deciding whether their movies should get made.
Yeah. Kind of insane. Yeah. I'm very glad that y'all did it to the tune of nearly 1 billion. I'm sorry, the marketing folks get mad when I say that, but I'm like, it's so close.
It's close.
It's so close. You made that billion on the home VHS.
We'll re-release it in a few years and then we'll keep doing that and it'll ultimately creep up.
It will be, no, I want to put the money for the physical media in that number, in my personal opinion. That's my thing. I know the marketing people, and actually you would be like, no, but in my mind,
physical and digital media.
Physical and digital, exactly. That's 1 billion. I know it is. Let's go to the third quote. How did I get in the wrong column? How did I get in the friend, manager, roadie column instead of the and I love her column?
That's from yesterday.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
That film is one of these films that I absolutely love because it was a quiet little hit, but it was so good and so sweet and so earnest.
Yeah. It was one of the movies in the time that I worked at Universal made me the most proud to work at the studio because we cast a British Indian actor to play the lead for a movie about the Beatles. And I distinctly remember that not a single time in the greenlight meeting did the fact that he was Indian come up as a reason why the movie couldn't be commercially viable. The only relevant question that was asked was, can he sing? And I just thought that was like really important because a lot of times when you make casting decisions like that, you have to find a backstory to have it make sense or a rationale. And it was just that he happened to be Indian. And I thought that was like, that made me very proud that we could make a decision like that as a studio.
Yeah. And he can sing. It's a very beautiful and touching movie. You've given us a little bit of a preview inside these green light meetings, which I should also say, this is a very heavy room. We're having like a lot of big folks at the studio. Is there other memorable green light meetings that you've been a part of? You've already given us, again, a few, but I'd love to hear if there's any more that you hold particularly dear.
So I actually think it's not quite in the context of greenlight meetings, but in terms of films that we've greenlit that at the time you don't realize how big they are until they become that. So I would say Get Out is another one where it came through a partnership with Blumhouse, made at an efficient price, so not very risky. But it wasn't until you actually saw the movie and saw the preview that you saw how special it was. And even then you couldn't have predicted like what a big moment it became in the zeitgeist. So that's another one. And I think that's like the beauty of movies is that you think that you're making something and sometimes you can't anticipate how big it's going to be.
Yeah. And your team, I know you study the first, 10 years of the film's life cycle. So
Good job.
You're looking, I remember it. Well, you're studying a little bit into the future. Like you're studying how this film will do at the 5-year anniversary, at the 10-year anniversary, and a lot of the points along its journey that are not just a part of that release.
Yeah. And I think that's like another element of the process where there could be movies that open to a certain box office level. So I'll use Puss in Boots 2 as an example. That opened to around 12 million domestically, and it ultimately got to 185. And that it was just a movie that played by word of mouth. It was a well-reviewed movie, and it continued to do really well in the home as well. And so those are other types of movies that tend to surprise me because it's just that audience that's driving. There's other strategic considerations that help as well, where it's dated on the calendar. And then we're seeing that with Wild Robot as well.
Yeah, definitely with Wild Robot. Yeah, the legs in animation is something that's really noteworthy. Well, very good job. We're going to move on to our next popcorn bucket.
Okay.
This one is going to be true or false questions. John Hughes left the library confession scene in The Breakfast Club mostly unscripted and let the actor ad-lib their reasons for being in detention. True or false?
I'm pretty sure that's true. He gave them general directions, but they improvised the rest.
Yeah.
My favorite is still Allison when she says, "I'm here because I had nothing better to do" on my Saturday.
That was so real, though.
Yeah.
That was so real and the best joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he did. He told each of the actors some generalities, but they got to improvise it.
Yeah.
And again, one of the most powerful scenes from that show. I think every girl of like a millennial set, like The Breakfast Club hits different.
Yeah.
Even though that's a Gen X movie, it was us too.
Yeah. It was a movie that I probably watched when I was a little bit too young to watch it. But again, because I was in such a big family, I could kind of get away with that. But it also represents to me, like a lot of times, especially for me, you are able to relate to characters that you might not think you have anything in common with or look anything like you. And I remember and this is why I'm particularly drawn to John Hughes movies, because they have the elements of like dysfunctional family, underdog, fish out of water, not feeling like you fit in, especially as a teenager, which is something I could have really related to back then. And I actually just really appreciate how much they accomplish in that movie with doing very little. Like it takes place almost entirely in one room for the most part. And you don't need to see these characters actually at school to understand the dynamics. It's very much like through this confession scene or what each of them brings to lunch or where they're sitting. You kind of get an understanding of their social hierarchy. And so I really related to it, even if like the characters didn't feel like I fit into any one of their stereotypes.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Which one was the closest to you, do you feel, if you had to pick one of the stereotypical Breakfast Clubbers?
Probably say Brian, only because he was the bookworm.
I'm not going to lie.
But you probably would have guessed that.
I mean, the math is mathing.
Yeah. I don't think I had the same exact struggles as him, but I probably would have related to him the most.
I think if you would have asked my mother in high school, I was the criminal. But I was a little bit maybe closer to the best. I was more of like the Ally Sheedy. Like I was a weird musical theater kid, but in Texas, that was Ally Sheedy. Like if you were not into like football, you were as basket Casey as they could be. Very much so. Trivia question number 2. Jon Favreau, who starred in the 2014 film Chef, attended culinary school early in his life before becoming a full-time actor. True or false?
Oh, it's partially false because he didn't go to culinary school early in his life, right?
No, but he basically, yes, it is false because in pre-production, Favreau shadowed Roy Choi, who was also a co-producer of the film, and he did a little mini training school with him on the culinary arts. Yeah. So he learned how to do it right.
You could see that in the movie because this movie has the best like ASMR food scenes ever. Like the scene where he's making his son the grilled cheese sandwich. I think about that grilled cheese sandwich all the time.
So fun fact, when they filmed that movie, I lived in Austin. I actually watched them film that movie. That is like Gary Clark performing on 6th Street. That is the real Franklin's barbecue that still to this day, the only person to ever skip the line was Obama. That was a very, like when they showed Austin like that, I was like, oh yeah, this is like, they really did understand the Austin food scene. And I love that movie as well.
They also have like a truck now. They opened a truck together in Vegas, and they also did a show together.
Yep. Yeah, they have the chef show, so it's like spawned even more. I love chef movies.
Yeah.
I know you say you definitely love the food aspect of it, but I would also imagine, like food, it's maybe like a comfort food type movie.
I'm drawn to stories where characters are kind of chasing their passions, but sometimes it leads them down a different path. And so I also think that is something with the genre of like chefs and like the way that you have to see them hustle in movies that I'm drawn to, because I'm also drawn to TV shows like The Bear. And so that's just like my go-to feel-good movie. And there's elements of like family in there as well.
All right. Last trivia question, true or false? Bridesmaids is Judd Apatow's highest grossing movie to date. True or false?
It's his highest grossing produced movie, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is because Paul Feig directed it.
Exactly.
I was thinking that too. I was like, produced by Judd Apatow. I mean, the house the bridesmaid built. We have other people on the podcast this year that were involved in Girls Trip. And one of the things I think is great is there's a direct line between Bridesmaids to Girls Trip and like showing sort of how you could start with one and then see like this can be done and show different identities.
Yeah. It started the new era of female-led comedies with Melissa McCarthy headlining a bunch of her own films. I always forget, but she got nominated for an Oscar for her performance.
She did,
And then obviously with Rebel Wilson and with Trainwreck. It was the first R-rated movie that I watched where I wasn't offended by how women were being portrayed and they weren't being overly sexualized or shown in a condescending way.
Yeah.
And obviously a great kind of reflection of what female friendships look like and just showing that women can be funny the same way that men are.
I think one of the things that you said that I found to be really interesting is it gave you an opportunity to do one of your favorite parts of your job. I'd love for you to tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I feel like my favorite part of the job is that I get to be part of the team that helps shepherd a movie from inception to greenlight. You can have all the right creative elements, but it needs to be economically viable. And so that's like my favorite part of the job is that working with the rest of the Universal team to how do you structure the movie in a way that allows us to greenlight it and ultimately be able to make those bold decisions creatively. Just being part of those rooms that you mentioned earlier where you see the entire business coming together. It's not just creative and business development. It's also marketing and distribution and franchise management, brand development. You're looking at all aspects of a movie before you're making a decision to make it.
Lots of factors just to bring it hit. But hey, the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
All right. So perfect so far. I'm going to grab this right here and I'm going to hand it to you. If you pop the top of that, yep, there you go. We're going to dive into the world of Universal Films and you're going to give me a quote from one of these movies and I get multiple choice because they're usually harder. But I've been doing well lately. So we'll see how we go.
I made my family disappear. A, the kids are all right. B, Home Alone. C, The Invention of Lying.
Definitely Macaulay Culkin, Home Alone.
Home Alone.
I'm trying to put the Shivani effect on it. I'm gonna try and see if I can remember who said it. I'm watching me and be like, this is the last one I'm gonna get right like that.
That was a special one in the Patel household.
It was? I would imagine.
It was a year-round, not only Christmas movie, and I'm actually the youngest in my entire extended family. So some of the quotes that the older cousins and siblings said to Kevin, my cousins would say to me as a joke. I knew how to pack my suitcase though. But yeah, there is a lot of elements that I could relate to. I thought I was Kevin McAllister in a lot of ways.
I mean, we all kind of wanted to be.
Waiting for our house to be robbed so I could save the day.
I just wanted the talk boy.
All right. I know I'm devastatingly good looking, but you got to stop staring at me.
Ooh.
Oh, this one's hard.
Yeah, go ahead.
A, Yesterday. B, First Man. C, Gravity.
Yes, I'm going to say Gravity.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, that's George Clooney.
Yeah. It feels like it's a little bit too comical for First Man.
No, definitely too comical for First Man.
All right.
Okay, one more.
Worst 19 years of my life. A, Ticket to Paradise. B, This Is 40. C, Lady Bird.
That's got to be Ticket to Paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah. George Clooney, Julia Roberts.
While they're on the plane, I'm pretty sure.
Not gonna lie, as a child of divorce, very similar beats. All right. Well, Shivani, thank you so much for doing this. We have one more thing before you get out of here. We have a little bit of rapid fire. What's your favorite movie snack?
The kids pack at AMC theaters, which I will always look around to make sure I don't know anyone before I order it, but it's the best value for the money.
You could pull off a kids pack.
It comes in a little pail, so that's why I'm a little embarrassed to be seen with it, but it's the best value.
I would say the kids pack is fine, but honestly, I would be like, what makes you think I'm not 12?
Yeah.
Like, I would literally just lean into it. What was the last show you binged?
The latest season of Shrinking.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Jessica Williams is a goddess.
Yeah.
I love it. Favorite movie star?
Right now, I'll give two, Zendaya and Glenn Powell.
That's a good pair. They need to do a movie together.
Yeah.
I would watch that. Going to the movie theater alone, yes or no?
Yes.
Good one. And favorite classic Universal film?
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Jurassic Park. And you're not the first person to say that one, but it still hurts my pride a little bit that it's a classic film now.
Yeah.
Like a classic car.
Yeah.
Anyway, Shivani, thank you so much for being on the Scene on the Screen podcast and telling us about your journey.
Of course. Thank you.